One of the most dangerous seasons in a construction business is not when things are slow. It's when everything looks like it's working. The phone is ringing, the schedule is full, you're answering questions all day. There's trucks in the field, crews moving, materials showing up, clients calling, invoices going out, proposals being written, and somehow every minute of your day is still spoken for. From the outside, it looks like momentum. From the inside, it feels like pressure. And because the business is active, because people are calling you, because money is moving, because your calendar is full, it's very easy to tell yourself that all of this activity just means that you're succeeding. That if you're this busy, the business must be growing. That if your team is stretched, you must be in high demand. That if you can barely keep up, you must be winning. But that is one of the biggest lies construction owners tell themselves, because busy and successful are not the same thing. In fact, sometimes they're exact opposites. Sometimes being busy is just what dysfunction feels like when it hasn't been diagnosed yet. Sometimes being busy means your pricing is off, so you need too much work to make enough money. Sometimes being busy means your systems are weak, so everything takes way too much owner involvement. Sometimes being busy just means that you've created a company that consumes all of your time, but doesn't actually produce much freedom, cash, or long-term value. And in construction, that trap is especially easy to fall into because activity is visible. People can see your job sites. They can see your trucks. They can see your office growing. They can even see revenue. But what they can't see is whether or not the work that you're doing is organized. They can't see when you're exhausted. They can't see whether the margins are real. They can't see whether every new job is actually making the company stronger or just adding more strain. Today, that's what I want to talk about, because I think that a lot of builders are not failing in the obvious sense. They're not out of business. They're certainly not sitting around with no leads, and they're not lazy. They're just trapped in businesses that are always in motion and never really under control. And if you don't identify that early, you can spend years building something that looks impressive from the outside, but quietly steals the freedom that you thought you were working towards. So this episode is about learning how to separate activity from progress, how to tell the difference between a company that is busy and a company that is actually becoming durable, because one of those leads to burnout, the other leads to a real business. Episode 4, busy is not the same as successful. I think builders confuse activity with progress for a very understandable reason. Construction is a real-world, physical industry. Work is visible. Movement is visible. There's always something happening. If you're in software, maybe progress is hidden in a code or a system or customer retention, but in construction, progress feels tangible. You can drive by your projects and see the house going up. You can walk the site and see the labor happening. You can watch trucks come in and out, and you can point to your backlog and say, look how much we've got going on. Now, that makes activity emotionally satisfying. It gives you something to point to. It gives you something to show your team, your spouse, your competitors, and yourself. And in the early stages of a company, that matters, because when you're first starting out, the biggest fear is often that there won't be enough work. So when you finally become busy, it feels like safety. It feels like validation. It feels like proof that you made it through the hardest part. The problem is that enough work and healthy business are not the same thing. You can have a calendar that is completely full and still be underpriced. You can have multiple jobs under construction and still have poor cash flow. You can have a team that is running hard and still have no clear systems. You can be answering calls constantly and still be the bottleneck that prevents growth. A lot of owners will never stop to ask the deeper question: what is this activity actually producing? Is it producing real profit? Is it producing stronger systems? Is it producing a better client experience? Is it producing more predictability? Is it producing more freedom for the owner and the team? Or is it just producing more motion? Because motion is satisfying. Motion feels productive, even when it's not. Think about the owner who spends his day bouncing from job site to job site, answering field questions, solving selection issues, checking in with clients, sending change orders at night, pricing the next job after dinner, and calling vendors before bed. That owner is absolutely busy. No one can accuse them of not working. But if that whole business still depends on them tomorrow in exactly the same way that it did yesterday, has the company actually progressed? Or has it just survived another day inside the machine? That's the difference that matters. Progress means that the business is getting stronger. Busy often means that the owner is just getting more consumed. And I think a lot of builders stay stuck here because the world around them rewards busyness. Clients reward responsiveness. Employees reward fast answers. Friends assume a full schedule means success. And even the owner starts using busyness as a badge of honor. I can't tell you how many times I've said the phrases, I'm slammed, or we're swamped, or we're covered up. And those phrases are usually said with a mix of pride and stress because deep down, they signal something real. People want what we do, but demand alone doesn't build a business. Demand without structure usually creates chaos. And chaos with revenue attached to it can survive longer than people think. But that's a trap that is extremely dangerous. A broken company with no work gets attention fast. A broken company with a full backlog can hide in plain sight for years. Let's make this more practical. What does busy, not successful actually look like inside of a construction company? Usually it looks like constant urgency. Everything feels important. Everything feels like it needs an answer right now. The owner's phone never stops ringing. The office is always reacting. The field is always waiting on something. There's always an open loop somewhere. A client needs an answer on a selection. A supervisor needs approval for a site condition. A vendor needs a deposit released immediately. An estimator needs a scope clarified. An invoice needs to go out. A change order hasn't been signed. A draw hasn't landed. A new lead wants a meeting. A current lead wants an update. Nothing seems individually catastrophic, but the accumulation is exhausting. And what happens is the owner starts to believe that this exhaustion is proof of their importance. That because so many things depend on them, that they must be operating at a high level. But often the opposite is true. Often that level of dependency is proof that the company is underbuilt. If every decision routes through one person, that is not sophistication, that's fragility. If every project requires heroic intervention, that's not excellence, that's a poor structure. If every week feels like a scramble, that doesn't mean you're in a high growth season. It may just mean that the company has no clean operating rhythm. I've seen this in construction over and over again. A company hits a certain size and starts adding jobs faster than it adds clarity. The owner is still selling, still managing clients, still solving production problems, still making major financial decisions, still overseeing quality, still carrying the emotional load for every employee issue. And because the company is technically growing, nobody stops it. Nobody says, wait a minute, that is not scaling well. They just keep going. More jobs, more overhead, more calls, more fires. And eventually, the business becomes this strange thing where it looks established from the outside, but it still functions like a small company held together with personality, effort, and memory. And that's a huge distinction. A small company is not the problem. Plenty of small companies are healthy. The problem is that a company that has grown in workload but not matured in structure, that's where business becomes dangerous. because now you've got the stress of a large company with the systems of a very small one. You've got the payroll to make, the clients to serve, the teams to lead, and you're still operating off of tribal knowledge, loose processes, and owner intervention. That kind of business can keep going for a surprisingly long time, but it's expensive. It's expensive emotionally and it's expensive operationally. It's even expensive financially because lack of clarity creates rework, weak delegation, poor estimating feedback, slower billing, poor job pacing, unnecessary mistakes, and inconsistent client communications. In other words, busy is rarely neutral. When a company is overly busy, it is often paying for the busyness in ways the owner doesn't immediately see, with margin, with time, with energy, with missed opportunities, and with leadership strain. So, when you say we are so busy, the next question should be what kind of busy are we? Are we the busy because demand is strong and systems are working? Or are we the busy because every normal business function still requires too much friction? Those are very different realities. If busy is not the same as successful, then what should success actually be measured by? This is where builders need to build a different scoreboard. Because if your scoreboard is just revenue, backlog, and how full the calendar feels, you will misread the business. The better scoreboard is health, not just volume, health. That means asking a different set of questions. First, are we making money consistently? Not occasionally, not theoretically, consistently. Because a company that is busy and underpriced is not successful. It's just working hard to stay in the same place. Second, is cash getting stronger? That question matters because a lot of companies can show revenue growth while still feeling constant pressure in the bank account. If every growth season requires more borrowing, more timing strain, and more stress, then the company may be active without becoming stable. Third, are our systems reducing friction over time? That means asking whether the same problems keep showing up or whether the organization is actually learning. Are handoffs getting better? Are selections better organized? Are estimates improving? Are project launches smoother? And is communication more consistent? Because a healthy business doesn't eliminate problems, it gets better at handling them. Fourth, is the owner becoming less central to routine operations? And this one is huge because many builders think that success means having more jobs. I would argue that one of the clearest signs of real success is that the company can handle more complexity without requiring proportionally more owner intervention. That is maturity. If you double the revenue and the owner stress doubles too, that business didn't really scale. It just expanded the burden. Fifth, are we getting better at choosing work? This is one of the hidden signs of success because unsuccessful businesses often take whatever comes in. Healthier businesses become significantly more selective. They know their ideal job types. They know their margins. They know where their process works best. They know which clients fit. And because of that, they can say no with confidence. That doesn't mean that they're lazy or arrogant. It just means that they understand more that the work is not always better work. Six, are people gaining clarity or gaining confusion? A company that is only busy tends to create confusion as it grows. Roles blur. Communication gets inconsistent. People step on each other. And the owner fills in the gaps. A company that is becoming successful usually does the opposite. Roles get clearer. Meetings get more purposeful. Scoreboards get more visible. Expectations get more defined. And that creates trust inside of the organization because people know how to win. And finally, is the company creating a better life or a more consuming one? That is not a soft question. That is a real business question. A lot of owners start a company to gain freedom and create something meaningful to provide for their family. Then, somewhere along the way, they create this machine that eats every evening, every weekend, every mental margin, and every ounce of peace that they have. If the business is growing, but your life is shrinking, something is off. That doesn't mean entrepreneurship should be easy. It does mean that the end goal can't just be more activity. The end goal has to be a better business. So if you want a simple framework, try this. Don't ask only, how much do we have going on? Ask, how profitable is the work that we're doing? How stable is our cash? How repeatable are our operations? How dependent is the company on me? How selective are we becoming? How clear is the team on their roles? How sustainable does this feel? That scoreboard will tell you far more than busyness ever will. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine two builders. Builder A is running 8 jobs. Builder B is running 4. From the outside, Builder A looks way more successful. More yard signs, more invoices, more job sites, more visible activity. If you ask around town, people might assume that Builder A is the bigger operator. But let's look closer. Builder A is underpriced on several jobs. Change orders are inconsistent. Client communications depend heavily on the owner. Cash is tight. 2 projects are drifting behind schedule. The office is overwhelmed. The owner is answering questions late at night and feels like they can never unplug. Margins are unpredictable. Meanwhile, Builder B is running 4 jobs with clearer pre-construction, tighter estimating, more disciplined client selection, stronger scheduling, and better handoffs between sales, office, and the field. This owner still works hard, but not every issue routes through them. Cash is healthier, gross profit is stronger, clients are better informed, the team is calmer. Which builder is actually more successful? The answer is obvious once you slow down enough to see it, but in real life, many owners spend years trying to become builder A. But why? Because activity is easier to admire than discipline. Volume is easier to brag about than control, because busyness is visible. Stability is quieter. This happens in real estate investing too. People love talking about doors. How many units do you have? But the better question really is, how healthy are the assets? Because a small portfolio with strong cash flow, good operations, and clean debt can outperform a much larger portfolio built on weak fundamentals. The same is true in construction. The better question is not, how many jobs do you have? It's, what does each job contribute to the company? Does it contribute cash? Does it contribute margin? Does it contribute better marketing position? Does it contribute team development? Or does it simply just add more noise? This is why some owners get trapped in growth cycles that never create relief. They hit a revenue goal, but overhead rises with it. They add staff, but clarity doesn't keep up. They take more work, but the work is not consistently good fit work. So they end up in this frustrating place where the company looks bigger every year, but it never really feels stronger. And this is one of the most discouraging realities in business. To work harder, to carry more, to build more, and still feel like stability never arrives. When that happens, the answer is usually not more. It's usually better. Better structure, better pricing, better client selection, better financial visibility, better operating rhythm, better delegation, and better controls. Success is rarely about stuffing more into the machine. More often, it's about making the machine healthier. So, how do you actually move from being a busy company to becoming a successful one? The first step is honesty. You have to stop using busyness as automatic proof that things are going well. A full calendar is not enough. A stressed team is not enough. A high revenue number is not enough. You have to look deeper. The second step is identifying where the friction really lives. Where does work slow down? Where do decisions pile up? Where do clients get confused? Where do field teams wait on answers? Where do financial surprises keep happening? Where does the owner keep getting pulled back into the same loops? That friction map will tell you a lot about where the company feels so heavy. Third, building a stronger scoreboard. Track a few things weekly that actually measure business health, like growth profit by job, cash position and upcoming obligations, sales pipeline quality, schedule performance, client communication rhythm, open change orders, owner dependent decisions. You don't need 50 metrics, you just need the right ones. Fourth, reduce unnecessary complexity. A lot of owners are busy partially because they have too many job types, too many weak fit clients, too many custom exceptions, and too many unclear promises. Complexity has a cost, and sometimes the fastest path to a healthy company is not adding more capacity, it's narrowing the work to what you do best. Fifth, clarify your roles. If the owner is the fallback for everything, there is no real structure. Write down who owns client updates, schedule management, budget review, quality oversight, purchasing flow, and approval points. Not perfectly, just clearly. A company gets calmer when people know where decisions live. Sixth, improve the handoffs. A huge amount of construction stress comes not from the work itself, but from bad transitions. Sales to estimating, estimating to contract, contract to pre-construction, pre-construction to field, field to billing, billing to closeout. If those handoffs are weak, the whole company feels busier than it needs to. And seventh, start defining success differently. Success is not just staying covered up. Success is creating a company that can deliver quality work with less chaos. Success is producing stronger financial results from better decisions, not just from more effort. Success is being able to think ahead instead of constantly reacting. Success is building something that doesn't require you to be the glue holding every part together. That transition doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with a mindset shift from how do we keep up to how do we get stronger? And that's a very different conversation that leads to very different decisions. If this episode feels close to home, that's probably because a lot of construction businesses live here for a very long time. Not failing, not flourishing, just constantly in motion. And I think that's why this matters so much, because if you're not being careful, you can normalize a business that drains you. You can convince yourself that overwhelm is just what growth feels like. You can spend years chasing more activity when what you really needed was more clarity. So the challenge from this episode is simple. Build a better scorecard. This week, don't just ask whether the team is busy. Ask whether the business is getting stronger. Ask whether the work is profitable. Ask whether the cash is improving. Ask if your team has more clarity than they did a month ago. And ask if the company is becoming more durable or just more dependent on your effort. Because the goal is not to build a business that looks impressive from the outside. It's to build one that actually works. One that creates stability, one that creates options, one that supports your team, your clients, and your family without requiring permanent chaos as the price. That's the difference between being busy and being successful, and that difference changes everything. Thanks for listening to Brickonomics, and I'll see you in the next one.